Hello and welcome to the worst team up ever. This is the Falcon and Winter after show from the Comic Crush. I'm your host, Paul, and I'm joined as always by the woman who always stands for Sebastian Stan, Liz. Hello.
Hello.
So every week we bring you commentary, analysis, and let's face it, good old-fashioned guesswork on the latest Disney Plus MCU show. Now, we love making these videos, largely because Liz loves an excuse to hang out with me. Don't lie, Liz. So help us keep going by hitting subscribe, hitting the little notification bell, liking the videos, sharing them with your friends and co-workers, maybe on the next Zoom meeting that you do for work. That would be good. But better yet, you could check out the Comic Crush Help Us Grow link that's in the description below, because that will take you to our Patreon, our web store, or the donate button. All that money actually goes to just keeping us running, keeping us going, and, you know, hopefully at some stage paying my fine co-host here for her time. You know, so give that a look. Remember, we are an independent source on comics, graphic novels, and of course the comic book industry, as well as comic book movies and TV and stuff like this. We love doing this, but it would be nice to be able to pay for it. So do check that out. Now, Liz, we're going to roll straight in to this week's episode. I think it's been a bit of a divisive episode for people online, looking at some of the comments, not many, but some of them. Certainly for me, for reasons we'll get into, we'll see if you felt the same way. In fine sort of Paul and Liz tradition, I'm sure you didn't. Now, I want to talk first about the opening scenes, which were this kind of cozy pastoral GRC, Global Repatriation Council advert. And that feel is kind of typical of those sort of big American industry ads that you see. And then given such a sharp contrast with the militarized kind of storming of the little internet cafe in Germany. How did you feel about all that?
I thought that was a great opening to the episode because it reminds you what's going on, you know, on a larger scale.
Yeah.
You know, kind of what we're very focused on Sam and Bucky and their mission and what they're up to. But it's really good to have those reminders of the snap, the blip and all the repercussions of that. And I love that they, you know, are kind of driving everything forward with that in mind. You know, so many things are kind of, you know, reliant on the fact that the world has changed in this way. And we kind of see how that is affecting everyone, you know, on a global scale, and how it is, you know, shaping the actions of the new cap and the American government and other governments, as well as our heroes, you know, that we're following along with. So,
I mean, I've got to say, Carly Morgenthau and the Flag Smashers sounds like a really cool indie band that perhaps we're just not into yet. I did like that where he went, "Oh, do you know Carly Morgenthau and the Flag Smashers?" It's just like, are they in town? Are they playing? What was interesting for me with that stuff is one, again, it's that contrast between the face of the industry and what the industry actually is, which you know you'll find in all sorts of. There was a great ad, like a kind of almost like video takedown of that sort of advertising once. That was basically an ad telling you how they manipulate your feelings and emotions. I'm sure you've seen it. Like it got circulated like hundreds of thousands of times. And it made me think of that because, of course, you know, that sort of stuff. And there is a thing that says, I forget who said it. It was someone famous, but, you know, that law without force is completely impotent. something I'm thinking about a lot lately, given everything that's going on in the news. What I found really interesting in those scenes was the way Walker reacts with anger towards the German kind of internet cafe guy, because Steve would have tried to reason that out, or at least he would have tried to understand, and that just kind of gives you more hints that perhaps Walker has issues, which they kind of hinted at in like episode 2.
Yeah, I mean, you could never imagine Steve, screaming in some guy's face, "Do you know who I am?" It just would never have happened. And I don't think it would have escalated to the point where the guy spat in his face really in the first place, because I think he would have come in a lot more reasonable and a lot less like storming the gates and making it.
And it actually takes Battlestar to remind him in the next scene, why people follow Carly and what it is about her message and what she's putting forward that makes it so kind of attractive and appealing.
Right.
Now, like we're kind of, we jump then. I mean, we're back with Bucky and Sam, and we're into another place in Berlin, in Germany, and here's where the problem started with me for this episode, because I had a bit of a problem or two with this particular episode. I wasn't really expecting to, but I found this episode really choppy.
Okay.
And I think some of the storytelling wasn't as expedient as it could have been. So you have Cap and Battlestar in Berlin, Germany, and Bucky and Sam in Berlin, in Germany. Different places, the prison and the internet cafe and whatnot. But I think that there was room and scope to bring those two storylines together in an actual physical sense. Because if you kind of get word that one of the sort of number one enemies of the Avengers is breaking out of a prison in Germany, like surely they would send Cap, and they know Cap's in Germany. Like, I just don't buy it personally. And also, I think Zemo, I don't know, I would have brought it better if Zemo engineered his own escape. I mean, maybe he did. He was reading Machiavelli.
To me, that he did. That was what I took from that. He assisted him, but he was the mastermind behind it.
Sure, but I mean,
he's had a lot of time to sit and think about this.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. But I just found this episode really choppy, and just again, the storytelling is not that expedient, because we find out that Zemo then, one, we find out he's a Baron. I just didn't know he was going to be Baron Exposition, because I mean, the amount of kind of shortcuts they take and they use Zemo for in this episode is just ridiculous. And it's like a lot of this could have been done in action. So, you have them pulling up to arriving at the airport where Zemo's got the private jet, and we've already seen the flash cars that his family have kind of stockpiled. We see the mask, but we're not really given an origin for the mask. I find it a bit odd that he's got that mask already. Like, I'd like to know a bit of history behind that, but I understand there wasn't necessarily time for that in this episode, even though they took an awful lot of time for everything else. But and Sam just says, "Oh, what? You've been rich this whole time?" And I just thought it was clunky as hell. Like, if they'd been getting on the plane and the butler had gone, "Oh, good to see you again, Baron Zemo," and Sam had gone, "What do you mean, Baron?" Just something like that. But instead, he just goes, "Oh, you've been rich this whole time." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm a Baron." And it's just like, this is clunky. Like, this is clunky.
I did not feel that way at all.
Oh, God.
I thought it just flowed just fine. And you were like, basically, they are kind of, it's a bit of a retcon from what they presented you with in War, but it is the character. It's like, okay, if you're going to do Baron Zemo, you want all this stuff. Like, I want all this stuff. This is like, and like putting him in the coat, putting him in the mask, like all of that. I was like, in like little, fangirl heaven.
Again, I've no problem. Sorry. I've no problem with the accoutrements. I've no problem with the mask or the coat or any of that. I would have just liked some background to the mask. I mean, maybe we'll get it in a later episode.
I don't know if we will get it or not, but I mean, we may not. It may be that they kind of make it so that, okay, he just grabbed that as like, the first thing he saw that could be used to hide his identity, or they could give you like, a whole background with it. And, obviously, we both know that there have been 2 Baron Zemos. The original Baron Zemo is Heinrich Zemo, who is his dad. So, maybe his dad wore the mask. Like, I mean, obviously in the comics, he would have done, so we may find out more little details. I wasn't nitpicky about that. I wasn't nitpicky about the mask. I was just happy to see it. I was just like, cool, great. I'm going to get a purple mask. The other thing, I did not find it necessary at all for there to be any kind of like involvement from John Walker at this stage. Yeah, sure, he may have heard that like Zemo broke out, but he made a point to say that he plans to follow Sam and Bucky and let them lead him to the Flag Smashers. So he could be following them the whole time just from a distance.
Could have been. And I've got
allowing them to just kind of take off and even let Zemo lead him wherever he needs to go later.
I do have a theory about that as well, which we'll get to hopefully later. But there is some good stuff in that plane sequence. Zemo telling his butler to give them the crappy food.
And the whole thing with like the Trouble Man soundtrack, like all of that, hilarious.
And interestingly, because we didn't get to bring it up in the first episode, but we talked about it in the second, which was the Bucky's list compared to Steve's list. And this week we find out that actually they're writing that list in the same book. And I loved that. I thought that was such a nice.
It was a really sweet detail, that Bucky would have Steve's notebook and be using it for his own sort of healing and growth and everything. So I love that. And I really liked seeing this side of Zemo because, like, the Zemo we see in Civil War is like very, he's very different. You don't really see this kind of like more, like the kind of like playful kind of villainous side of him. You see this very kind of tortured individual who, lost family and everything. And it's like if you're gonna have Zemo come back, you kind of want to see him as like, a proper villain too, and like and I love the dynamic of him having to work with them. It's like a favorite trope of mine, to see the heroes kind of have to work with the villain to get what they all want. And while they don't really trust him as far as they can throw him, they have to rely on him. And I like that. And I think that's part of the point that they were making by saying like, well, he's got all the resources and they need to just kind of, like it or not, rely on him, to get them what they need.
And it's interesting that the kind of, his manipulation starts straight away on the plane. And because he kind of starts dividing them straight away, divide and conquer. You can tell he's been reading Machiavelli, which, he's employing the simplest forms of that stuff possible. And his... The kind of bat that he uses to try and beat Sam down with is culture and education. Because as much as Sam talks about Marvin Gaye, but he doesn't talk about why Marvin Gaye is great. And yet Zemo does. Like he sort of nails the point of why Trouble Man might be considered a great album and all this. And then, of course, when we see them entering Madripoor and Sam makes the comment about looking like a pimp and Zemo is, well, only an American would consider a fashion-forward black men to look like a pimp when they're wearing this outfit. And it's just like, yeah, actually he's kind of hitting Sam with some really interesting points, and he's using Sam's own culture against him. And it's just like, okay, that's really interesting. It's actually a really interesting place for the show to go.
There's a lot of interesting stuff that came from that conversation on the plane. Like, even, in that same conversation about the Trouble Man soundtrack, we're kind of reminded, Bucky, like, says, yeah, I liked it, but without a lot of enthusiasm. And he's like, yeah, I like 40s music. Yeah. And, it kind of makes the point that, like, Bucky, his, like, heyday that he still looks back to as, like, the good times is still, like, the 40s. Yeah. And in the way that Steve, like, embraced, moving forward, and, like, Steve loved Marvin Gaye. Bucky's like, yeah, it was okay. He hasn't really gotten to the point where he loves being in the present, and he loves, like, yeah, sort of, and he wants to be part of, like, this kind of new world that Steve did want to be part of.
And actually, so much of the issue with Bucky is rooted in his past, and of course the wider past of the Shield and Cap, and then beyond that, the wider past of the war and beyond even that. So that's kind of, as you say, that's fascinating stuff for them to start playing with. We have a brief kind of move away from this stuff for a bit to see what's going on with Carly Morgenthau, and how they're planning to kind of, they're clearly planning a job. You don't get told necessarily what job it is, but we also find out something about Carly in that she is kind of paying a visit to someone who is clearly dying, but we don't know the relationship yet. Like, it doesn't seem to be her mother, because the name is different for a start, but I'm wondering about that.
Like, like probably a younger woman. So either, like, a close friend, a lover, like, we don't really know.
So I'm kind of curious to find out who that person is.
Well, I mean, we're told her name, which is Sonia Madani, which is kind of interesting because there is a character in the Punisher.
I was thinking that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any relation, but there's Dinah Madani in the Punisher series. I think it's coincidence, but this isn't a character that I've heard of from the comics or anything like that. So, I think as far as I know, it's just a character that we're gonna find out a little bit more about in the show. But we find out later in the episode that she did in fact die. Yeah. And they end up following a lead, kind of about her, and that's like, how they kind of know to go look for the flag smashers where they do. But yeah, we see that Carly, obviously cares very much about this person, and hopefully we'll kind of get some more, clarity on what the relationship is.
But back in Madripoor, we're given, like, I actually really like the scenes entering Madripoor. Now Madripoor, we should say, now I only know Madripoor from mentions in or some stuff in the X-Men, but it's quite a big part of the Marvel universe, right?
Yeah, so it's like basically Madripoor is sort of like it's sort of like the Mos Eisley of the Marvel universe. It's like, if you need some place that's kind of, lawless and, really like, like the divide between rich and poor is really extreme. And, basically there's just danger everywhere you turn. You kind of go to Madripoor as far as, it's a place where the writers can kind of, play with those kind of concepts. And like, yeah, certainly a lot of X-Men and Wolverine storylines, you in Madripoor.
I think the most
Sam mentions, it's like, it used to be like a haven for pirates. So it kind of has that lawless pirate, mentality still. So when we first arrive in Madripoor, we're put in like, there's, so there's like, like I said, with the rich poor divide, there's Low Town, which is where all the poor people are, and High Town, which is, where we come to find out that, some another character that we know very well, when she appears, she takes them to Hightown.
Yeah, I mean, I love the texture of the scenes going into Madripoor. Like the Bunraku boys. I mean, they're not Bunraku boys, but I guess they're the Indonesian equivalent on the motorbikes with the glow in the dark mask was fantastic, and it's just like the colors they were using there.
Very Blade Runner kind of, in a way.
Yeah. Which is, and it reminds me of what I can't remember the name of the author, but when he wrote about Mumbai, I think it was, and he described it as a maximum city, and that's kind of what Madripoor looked like to me. It's a maximum city, and you have all that kind of graffiti and art on the walls, some of which looked like comic book art, which was interesting. And of course, you have the graffiti that tells you the power broker is watching. We still don't know who the power broker is. There's been some speculation online. People are apparently trying to guess. Is this a character? Now, we talked about the power broker in episode 2. I can't remember if you mentioned this or not. Is it a character that's been given a name, like an identity? Or is it just the power broker?
Yeah, there are 2 different characters who have been, called the power broker. So, but Marvel can do what they want. If they want to give this to somebody else, they can do that. So, I like totally applaud anybody who wants to like speculate about, who the power broker is. Because it's like, the MCU doesn't always play hard and fast by the rules. Like, like they've changed Carly from, Carl Morgenthau to Carly, etc. So, I'm very open to it being a character that we've already met along the way, because I like that, I thought it was interesting that they kind of, even though we're kind of beginning to see that the power broker is maybe the real villain of the piece, we haven't met them yet, as far as we know.
Yeah. And I love the way you sound like a total Marvel stan there, Liz. Marvel can do what it wants.
Of course they can.
So when we get into the bar, we have them kind of assuming old identities or new identities in some cases. Sam is pretending to be the
Smiling Tiger.
Smiling Tiger.
Yeah.
Is that a character?
Yeah, that is a known character. Right. And they even use his name, Conrad Mack. And that's a character who, he kind of like has a history, with Madripoor. Like, he kind of spends a long time, in the underworld of Madripoor. So it kind of would make sense for them to, have Sam use his identity.
And of course, Bucky then has to slip back into the identity of the Winter Soldier, which he does with aplomb. I quite enjoyed that sequence. But we also see someone we find out will be Sharon Carter sneaking off in the background. He comes into play in a bit. Now we meet this character Selby, who is kind of herself some kind of broker or sort of criminal mastermind working out of Madripoor, dealing with Zemo and Sam. I actually kind of, I don't know, I kind of found her a bit annoying, but
well, you didn't have to find her annoying for long.
Yeah, but personal taste and all that. Yeah, I mean that scene blips by. I the whole thing with Sam having to answer the call, I just found it all a bit clunky this week.
Well, it was not Sam's finest hour. Like, like, why did you not turn your phone off, Sam? This is just really not like your A game here.
I want to say I'm not really knocking I think I found the pacing in the episode being the problem this week, and I'm not knocking the writing, which I believe this episode is written by Derek Kolstad, who does do comics. You regularly see his name pop up on Marvel books, but I'm not knocking the writing as such. I couldn't do it better, but I just found some of the pacing a bit off. this week. But of course, so Zemo and Sam and Bucky are rescued by Sharon Carter, who makes a lot of noise about still being kind of ostracized from the American kind of secret services. I personally think, I'm going to say it now, I think Agent 13 is still Agent 13. I don't think for a minute.
What?
Well, I mean that I think she definitely still is working for the American secret services in some capacity. I think she's probably working for the GRC. I think she's almost definitely in communication with Cap. I think all that argument about how stupid the stars and the stripes are and all that stuff is just a smokescreen. I think she's kind of making herself seem like one thing and she is actually another. I still think she's kind of undercover, basically.
There's definitely something going on with Sharon. I mean, we like, the sort of note we leave her on is that she called someone up to say, oh, there's a problem. And there's also the fact that she quite brutally kills quite a lot of people in this episode.
That was so badass. So whilst Bucky and Zemo and Sam are all questioning Nagler, is it? Who's the scientist who has recreated the super soldier serum. I don't know how hard that is for me to say, but he's recreated the serum. And whilst they're having this quiet little chat with him, she kills 7 people.
Right. Yeah.
She
she's also the one who kills Selby, when they're like, about to be all shot by her henchmen.
Yeah. She defends that entire yard by herself. I mean, that is amazing. I love that. It also proves that chivalry is completely dead in the Marvel universe, because at no stage does one of the tough guys run out to help her. Which is like, yeah, okay, guys, come on. You're all kind of trained combatants.
Right. This is definitely a side of Sharon that we haven't really seen before.
No.
Like, we know she's a soldier and that soldiers have to kill and everything like that, but they're definitely showing you this side of Sharon that, in the in Winter Soldier, in Civil War, she's a pretty straight arrow, and it's pretty easy to suss her out as like, she's one of the good guys. And like here we kind of see some darker shades. Sharon.
But I really enjoyed it. Like I thought she was great in this episode. But again, I still find I love the fact that Bucky goes, oh, she's become really annoying.
She's really horrible now. Like,
yeah. But she's right. She is kind of pointing out that Bucky does still believe in all the stars and stripes crap. And maybe she is just really, really burnt from her experiences in Winter Soldier, where, and indeed in Civil War, where, she keeps finding herself on the wrong side of the government she's working for and believes in. So maybe it is that. I mean, I'm fully ready as always to be proven wrong. In fact, I always quite enjoy being proven wrong by these things, because it means that the story has outwitted you. So yeah, I mean, the reveal of how much super soldier serum is out there is quite daunting. 20, and well, we know that at least roughly half that has been used already by Carly and her cohorts. But there's still some on the open market. Well, Carly has it, and Carly fully expects the power broker to kind of bend to her will now that Nagel is dead. Also, I've got to point out just how great Zemo was in. I mean, first of all, can we give a shout out to Zemo dancing?
Oh, I like it.
Was just the worst thing I've ever seen.
I loved it. It's like,
no, but you know what I mean. Come on.
Yeah, just he's like just totally happy to be there, just happy to be out of prison. Like, Sam and Bucky are like angsting about everything that's going on, and Zemo's just like, yeah, it's a party. I'm just gonna go dance.
Yeah, I loved it. There is now a Twitter account called Zemo Dancing or something like that, where you can request a track, and whoever's running it just puts up the name of the track and the singer and the little gif of Zemo dancing. It's also been pointed out how much Daniel Brawl resembles a young Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins.
Really? Oh, yeah. Amazing,
so, yeah. Maybe there's something in it. Maybe we could be looking at a music career for Daniel Brawl here. I don't know.
Dancing career.
But yeah, I really love Zemo in this episode.
Oh yeah, we'll get more into it, but like pretty much every moment that he was on screen brought me joy.
Yeah, I really loved it. So I mean, they kind of escape with their lives, having found out, Zemo kills Nagel, which is Nagel. Sorry. Which is completely in keeping with his kind of beliefs, which is there cannot be more superpowered people running around. And I really like that he did that, because
it's what he would do. As much as like he, is helping them out, we can never kind of like look past the fact that he's got his own agenda. And there was that, going back to the conversation they had on the plane, he kind of reminds them like that it's dangerous when these superheroes like Captain America get put on pedestals and become icons, because then people begin to lose sight of them as human beings that have flaws. And that's what allows them to, like potentially start wars and, and let innocent people kind of fall, as collateral damage, which is, what happened in Sokovia. And he makes comparisons with Hitler and stuff like that. And that's, that is his, those are his beliefs. And that is, kind of where he's always going to be coming from, so whether he's working with them or not, that is always going to be underlying everything he does. So they're taking him, where he wants to be as much as he's taking them where they want to be.
It's interesting because I was watching the end of Civil War the other day. It was still on my sort of queue list for Disney Plus, and I like there was a couple of minutes to go, so I just watched that last few minutes at the end just to clear off the queue list really. And there's that great scene where Everett Ross says to him, you failed spectacularly, or your plan failed spectacularly, and he just goes, did it? It's just like, no, of course he didn't. And it's just like, he is a tactician and a master. And again, brings you back to the Machiavelli stuff. There's a reason why he's kind of reading that stuff. He is a kind of really skilled military tactician, and that's what he's doing. Is psychological warfare all the way through. The scene of him heading out onto the top of the shipping crate and shooting the gas pipe was great. I loved that. And then of course finding the supercharger. The Dodge supercharger was great.
He teaches them, like, he did Sam and Bucky. And it's like, he, basically proves that he can get away if he wants to.
Yeah.
But then he comes and gets them,
Yeah.
So comes back with the car and it's like, oh, hop in, guys. So
he's got a plan. And as you say, if he's been planning the prison breakout, who knows what he's gone beyond that and planned. I can kind of see Zemo becoming a bigger threat at the end of this. They better leave him alive. Like if they kill him off, I'm going to be, if they give him like a crossbones ending where they just waste him straight away. Funny enough, I was reading, I can't remember if we talked about this on one of the previous episodes, but apparently Frank Grillo almost didn't come back for Endgame because of the fact that they killed him off in Civil War. And he was like, no way. I didn't like the way this was done. I'm not coming back. And apparently his son kind of just went to him, look, how could you not be part of this? Like, it's the last time, that they're all going to have these guys on screen together, and like, you should definitely do this. And he then kind of called up the Russos and went back. But yeah, I mean, I hope they don't waste him. I hope he's going to be a lingering threat, even if it's just in the shows. Like, I would love to see him come back every now and then.
Yeah, because he's such a spectacular villain. Like, I feel like, what they're doing now should be building up to, a bigger role for him. Because I feel like they're just kind of getting started with this character. I'd really like to see more of him. And, I love that they've now got him in the costume, with all the gadgets and, like the private jets and all that stuff. With the resources that you kind of expect him to have. And so I'm in total agreement that I'm going to be really devastated if they just kill him off. Yeah.
And also we've got, lingering questions about Sharon, as you say. But most importantly for this episode, we get to, I can't remember where they go in Eastern Europe now. Is it Bratislava or Latvia? Yeah. And they talk about what's happened to Sokovia after Ultron had finished with it, which was basically gets swallowed up. And they talk about the memorial, which we think we'll see because it did feature heavily in the trailers. There was the scenes of Zemo outside the Sokovian memorial. And most excitingly, we see the return of one of the Dora Milaje from Black Panther, which I thought was great. I forget the name of the character now, but she was featured
Ayo.
Ayo, thank you. But she featured actually quite heavily in the first Black Panther movie and I think she's actually in Civil War.
You're probably right.
I think she's the character that has the sort of little face off with Black Widow in
Civil War.
Yeah. Well, there's a tiny moment of a few seconds where she just tells her, move or I'll move you. Right. And I've got a feeling that's her. But yes, very interesting. I love the fact that you get the kind of Wakandan music as well as you see AO. Like I loved all of that. Really surprised to see them. I mean, I shouldn't have been because they mentioned Wakanda near the beginning.
It made perfect sense. When he started finding those little balls on the ground, I was like, oh, what is this? Like, I wasn't sure, okay, who's about to appear, who dropped these things. But of course, it makes perfect sense that it would be the Dora Milaje. Of course, they would be all over it if Zemo escapes. He killed their king. They're not going to just like leave that alone. So it was perfect to me that that they would show up.
And also, it's good because I wonder if they'll make AO a major part of the new World of Wakanda series that's coming. Because they talked about that a little bit. I know Ryan Coogler is very heavily involved in that at the moment, as well as Black Panther 2. And that's going to explore the wider kind of country of Wakanda and the sort of more street level stuff. So I wonder how heavily this will lead into that. We don't know because there's no sort of start date for that show yet, as far as I know. And then they have talked about it very little. But yeah, exciting stuff happening. I hope next week settles down a bit. I just felt this being the midway point, it was a bit, the pacing was just slightly off for me. Very choppy, very choppy.
Okay. Carry on.
No. I'm just saying. I could have done with.
I did not feel that at all. I loved every second of this episode, like start to finish. I really didn't feel any pacing issues. For me, that didn't happen. I felt that it all like, flowed in a nice way. I liked sort of the way they handled like, the Baron Zemo stuff, because they hadn't really touched on any of those aspects of him as a villain in Civil War. They kind of did something different there. But I wanted that, like if you're going to reintroduce him, I thought that those things are kind of, they're components of his character that kind of, for me, really make him the character I know from the comics, beyond just being the great sort of, military tactician. And, I geek out over stuff like the puffy coat and the, purple mouth.
Oh, look, I like all the accoutrements. I just, again, like the trouble I have with it is it's a supervillain identity for a person that hates supervillains, and I just want to find out some sort of background as to where that comes from. I didn't necessarily need it in this episode, so I am griping a little bit, and I just felt the pace was off. Again, like everyone's doing a great job on this show. I think the director and writers, Derek Kolstad, like I've read some of his comments, he's a really good writer. So I've got no issue there. I just felt this episode was slightly off compared to the first two. But I'm sure everything will be sort of smoothed over. That's pretty much us done. We've got to say hello to new subscribers this week. Hello, guys. Thank you very much for subscribing, including Charisma Effect, our buddy. We see him in orbit all the time. We just want to say hello. That is, of course, his online name, his real name. That would be interesting. Hello, and also Mr. Dan Bussey again. He has a message just to say how much he's loving Zemo in this latest episode. Right
there with you,
Dan. So hello, Dan. Thanks for messaging in with that, guys. If you want to kind of shout out on the show, do drop us a comment in the box there. Drop us a like, drop us a subscribe, and share the episode with your pals. I know you want to. We want you to. Come on, push us up in the subscribers. We would love to have more of you watching and telling us what you think about this show, and of course about the show we're talking about, or anything related to comics. We've got more good video shows coming up. There is a new episode of The Comics Touch with myself and Gemma from Traveling Man on the YouTube channel now. There is a brand new From Panels to Pictures with me and Nikki, which is all about the Snyder Cut, which I know is a film that people want to talk about. We are still hoping to do the Patreon only get together with all the hosts of the sort of film and TV related shows. But there's been a few things this week that kind of set that back. But we will kind of reschedule it. So it is coming, Patreon guys. There is about to be some new stuff happening for the patrons as well. I'm going to start messaging you. If any of you are patrons and you're watching this now, I'm going to start messaging you soon. You'll get an email just asking you some questions about the Patreon, and of course telling you about some new things we're going to be doing. And of course, we have other shows planned for YouTube. So we're sort of discussing things now, but we've got a great new show lined up. And of course, we will always be back for the Marvel stuff. We've got Loki in June and then Black Widow in July. But yeah, catch those other episodes. They're on the YouTube channel now, all in the playlist. Do take a look at the Help Us Grow button and link, because it quite literally helps us go. It helps us do shows like this. And of course, check out the web store. So if you want to buy some comics, got some comics there for you. And the website, loads of articles and things going on in there every week. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Like, share, subscribe, because We need your support, and we love it, and we love to hear from you. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you, as always, to my amazing co-host Liz, giving us all the deep background on these characters, where they're from, and helping me kind of figure out where they might be going. And of course, thanks to you, the viewers, because without you, it's just not worth doing. So thanks very much, Liz. See you later.
Bye.
Catch you guys next time on The Crow.